Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. You're here because, like us, you believe that sport is a vehicle for elevating global consciousness. But you know that elevating consciousness through sport only matters if it actually helps you to achieve and perform at your highest level. We created this show to empower your performance with the wisdom and ideas of the world's highest achieving mind, body, and spirit competitors. In today's episode, we have a very special episode. Rich Walkoff interviewed Jim Thompson, the founder and CEO of Positive Coaching Alliance. PCA is truly one of the leaders and founders of this movement to instill in not just coaches, but in athletes at the youth level, all the way up to the highest levels of professional sport, what it means to not just be a better athlete, but to be a better person, and truly to measure performance and success, not just by the scoreboard, but to measure it also by how we are as people, how our community views us, and how we treat our community, how we treat our teammates, our parents, our friends, our family, our athletes that we are coaching and leading. Jim's been instrumental in really igniting a large-scale just transformation across the entire youth sports spectrum nationally, and truly has put together an absolutely incredible organization that is dedicated to both talking the talk and walking the walk, and it's absolutely incredible. In this episode, he shares just some incredible knowledge, guys, on what it really takes to not only be a double goal coach, as he talks about, but also to be a coach and leader that empowers your athletes, your friends, your family, your community, by not demeaning them, by not attacking them, but by truly empowering them with the knowledge and belief that they can succeed on their own. This should be an absolutely incredible episode for you guys. Enjoy it. And as always, like, share this content, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and subscribe to our podcast. We want to grow this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help. So do it, subscribe, share, like. If it adds value in your life, share it with somebody else who needs to hear it. Thanks, guys, and enjoy this episode of Omni Athlete.
All right, Jim. Well, again, thanks for making the time to be with us. And I love what your organization is all about. You know, when you think about it, you need a license to do almost anything in this world except to be a parent or a coach. And isn't that ironic, huh?
Yep. Yeah. Well, and buy a gun, maybe.
Yeah, we won't get into that storyline, but tell me about what you're doing to help amplify a most vital need in our society and culture, and that is teaching people how to be better coaches to kids, because it's such an important role that they play in the formative years of young kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I got started in this. I dropped out of college, needed a job, ended up getting a job as a teacher aide in a emotionally disturbed program school. Never wanted to be a teacher, but I realized I love teaching. I love working with these kids, very troubled kids. And I was working for a couple of people way ahead of their time. Shirley Pearl was the school principal, and Don Chalman was the school social worker. These very troubled kids were bussed in from all over the city of St. Paul. They had all kinds of problems. And now looking back on it, they were probably abused, neglected, all kinds of bad things happened to them. And the culture of the school was relentless positivity. So every time those kids moved a little bit in the right direction, every time they tried something, they got reinforced and they got better. Met my wife there 6, 7, 8 years later. I'm a business student at Stanford. My son is playing sports for the first time, and I go to his games, and my God, there's so much negativity there. I couldn't believe it. And whereas these very troubled kids in St. Paul, Minnesota did well when they got this diet of relentless positivity, these kids whose parents were PhD students at Stanford, they were high-tech workers, they were not troubled at all in the normal sort of way. But they didn't do very well. They didn't play very well because of all the negativity. So that's really where Positive Coaching Alliance got started. And I asked the question, what do kids need from youth sports to have a great experience? And we came up with 3 things. One is they need to be connected to their coach and their team. We all want to be part of something bigger. Second, they need to believe they can get better. They can be a really bad athlete to start with, but if they have a coach who convinces them they can get better if they work at it, the sky's the limit. And third, they want to be on a team that does things the right way. They want to honor the game. So that was really how it all started 20 some years ago. This is Positive Coaching Alliance's 20th anniversary year.
Yeah. Now, it seems like you're really connecting on a deep emotional level for these kids who have, in some cases, so many challenges when they're deprived of the normal so-called healthy upbringing as the kids in St. Paul were. But even those so-called gifted kids, or those coming from the most cherished families, had the same challenges in terms of connecting emotionally with themselves and the game and growth.
Yeah, you know, my wife teaches mindfulness. And one of the things she talks about is Velcro, that when we have we get negative feedback, we Velcro it to our brain, we remember it. And when we get positive feedback, we like it, but it tends to kind of flow away. And part of her mindfulness training is when something good happens, to really experience it, to be there and feel it all through your body, to try to Velcro it in. So I did a workshop years ago. We have one of our tools that we got from John Goffman, who's a psychology professor at the University of Washington, the magic ratio, 5 positives for every criticism you make. I was doing a workshop many years ago now, and I mentioned this, and the guy in the audience raised his hand and said, "Hey, I know why it needs to be 5 to 1." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because when somebody tells me something positive, I say, great, but it goes away. But that negative statement reverberates around my brain." Phil Jackson calls it the nuclear response. He working with NBA players, he'll say, you're doing this right and doing well with that. And then you drop the nuclear bomb and say, this is not working very well. That's what they remember. That's why we need to be constantly recognizing. We want coaches to be noticers, to notice the effort and the improvement kids are making and comment on it.
Yeah, that's fascinating that the positive sort of goes off off a duck's back, but when you have the negative, that has the Velcro effect, as you point out. Can you explore that a little bit more? Why are we so stigmatized by negativity, or not even negativity, but might even be constructive criticism? But why are kids more vulnerable to the adverse effects of that than adults? Or maybe it just carries on through adulthood as well.
Well, I think we all want to be part. First of all, this is not something I'm an expert in, so I'm giving you an opinion that's not based, but I think it's true. We all want to be part of something, and through history, when people were, kicked out of their clan or their tribe, they didn't survive very well. We don't now. Now I can live on my own. Fortunately, I don't have to, but I could live on my own. I could go to work. I could be by myself, and no bear is going to come and eat me. It wasn't that way in the past. The wild animals that were feeding on humans. We think back on the humans hunting the bears and the saber-toothed tigers, but at a certain point earlier, it was the reverse. And so it was really important for us to be part of a team, part of a group. And so I think that's still going on. When we get negativity, it's like, oh, am I going to be kicked out of this group? It's not conscious. It's a very subconscious thing. That's why Mary Fry, who's on our National Advisory Board, she's a researcher at the University of Kansas, has done a lot of work on caring climate. And the number one thing, when I talk to coaches and parents about, kids need to be connected, they need to believe they can get better, and they want to be part of a team that does things the right way. And I say, which of these is the most important? And you can make a case for all three. You could say, with the problems we have in this country, that being part of a group that does things the right way could be the most important. But our position is the most important is the connectedness. Because if kids don't feel connected, they're not going to stick to it. They're not going to get the other benefits of sports. So helping kids, endorsing kids, helping kids feel like when they come to practice to say, "Hey, Billy, man, it's great to see you today. We're going to work hard. We're going to have a great time in practice today." That little bit of interaction can help Billy. Maybe Billy's parents are getting divorced. Maybe he had a really bad day in school. But that little interaction, like, "I'm really glad you're here."
That's awesome. And, I guess it goes to that sociological tribal connection that all humans want to have. And that is innate. It's in our DNA. It's been like that forever. I know when I coached Little League, when my sons were kids, I had an awards night and a barbecue at the end of the season. And I gave every kid an award, even those who were absolutely the most challenged at the effort. And I gave them best inspiration or the best spirit, hustle. I had to dig really deep to find something for everybody. But every kid was so honored and beaming when they got their award for whatever it might have been, because it's all a part of that belonging again.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I once got I actually have a set of them around, but I got a set of postcards. They were baseball postcards. I was coaching Little League baseball at the time. And instead of having most valuable player, best player, I gave every kid an individualized award, just like you. Will Clark was a big star at that time for the Giants. And I gave, one of our first baseman, the Will the Thrill Award.
Yeah.
And every kid got something, and it was truthful. There was some, it wasn't just making, wow, you're the greatest player in the world when the kid wasn't. But every kid got something. And those kids, parents told me that, months later, they still got that thing up on their wall.
Yeah, because it validated their effort, their involvement, and it elevated their self-esteem. And I think so much of that is either overlooked or overshadowed by this penchant for winning or being the very best. When you talk about the entertainment versus developmental culture in youth sports today, and that really personifies the great divide. And I'd love you to talk about that.
Yeah, I once I was interviewed by a New York Times writer, and I ended up saying, the West won the Cold War, and then the first thing to do is emulate East Germany's approach to sports. East Germany would track kids very early on. Well, this kid looks like a good soccer player. This kid looks like a good ping pong player, whatever. And now we're doing that. I had a good friend of mine in high school. He was bussed in from a small town nearby. We had a small town. This is West Fargo, North Dakota. Small town, small high school. He got to play even though he wasn't very good, and he was small. But between his sophomore and junior year, he grew to be, get to be 6'1", and eventually he's like 6'1", 195 pounds, really strong and really fast. He was my wide receiver as a quarterback, so he made me look good a lot of the time. Well, he ended up playing on a national championship team at North Dakota State University. He turned a punt for a touchdown. He was a stud athlete, but not early on he wasn't. And so it's really crucial that we keep as many kids in sports as possible. If all you want to do is have the greatest Olympic teams and the greatest athletes, then you want to keep as many kids in sports, because you can't pick who's going to. Some of you can. LeBron James probably. I just saw a thing about LeBron James Jr., and he's in like 6th grade or something. It's real clear he's going to be a amazing athlete already. But a lot of kids you can't pick. Plus, from a national security standpoint, I was really struck that a while back. I was thinking about the highways. The highway system in the United States was built. The justification President Eisenhower used was for national security. If we get invaded, we need to be able to move the tanks back and forth. And so we need a highway system. Well, that's not why we need a highway system, but that was the rationale for it. But if you look at national security, we need kids who are healthy and are active, and they learn physical literacy, and then they stay active when they grow up. That helps our national security. So we should be putting millions and millions of dollars into youth sports, so that many kids, if a kid wants, I want to play the violin, that's all I want to work on. Great, go play the violin. But most kids, they would love to stay in sports if there's a place for them, and it would benefit our country.
Yeah, but of course, not only being involved in sports, but having the right coaching and guidance and agenda, because if we just replicate some of the bad messaging that's gone on in the West, if you will, for so long, you may make things worse rather than better. I would remember being in Russia with the Athletes United for Peace group with Guy Benjamin, his organization, in 1986, and we were taken behind the scenes in Moscow and other communities where they did identify kids as early as 5 and 6 years old with these physical gifts and taken to these camps. It's full immersion away from their families, and it was all to prop up the bounty and blessing of the USSR in the day, because if they had better athletes, it would show you that their way was superior to our way. Well, that full immersion and that lockstep mentality comes at a great price, I think.
Yeah, I did a podcast interview with a number of NHL players and former NHL players, and a lot of Canadian NHL players were in a similar situation. They were like 12 years old, 13 years old, and they were taken from their family. The family they weren't kidnapped. They wanted to be an NHL star, but they were taken away at an early age and put into a very elite hockey program. I think for some kids, we all want to compete with people. It's no fun beating people all the time. It's no fun getting beat all the time. We want to compete at a level where it's about the same ability. So we know that if we compete really hard, we have a chance to beat this other team. So the travel teams and that sort of thing, it's not all bad, because it does give kids competition against comparable competitors, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I remember Jim Harbaugh would always say, steel sharpens steel, and that's on the professional level. And if you could take it down to the youth level, we get it. The traveling squads, the gifted kids who will not hone their craft if they're beating opponents 20-0 in Little League or blowing them out on the hoop court. But back to the very core essence of why youth sports is so critical in shaping the minds and hearts and souls of kids. If you accentuate the wrong thing, if you make the old school winning isn't everything, it's the only thing approach versus the learning and the developmental side of it from the social aspect, from the humanistic aspect, from the respect aspect that you accentuate so much in the Positive Coaching Alliance. I'd love you to explore that, because that's the great divide.
Sure. We have a model for athletes we call the triple impact competitor. A triple impact competitor is a person of character who elevates himself, elevates her teammates, elevates the game by the way he or she competes. And there's a lot of research that identity drives behavior. Who we think we are and who we want to be, we try to live up to that. So what we want is coaches to get their kids, their players, to think of themselves as triple impact competitors, as elevators. Elevator is not the old word, it's a new word. Elevator with an ER for a new identity. An elevator is somebody who is, every situation they're in, they're looking around. How can I make this better? What's going on here? What's going on with me? What's going on with other people? How can I make it better? And we really believe if we produce elevators, if we have high school and youth athletes who become elevators through youth sports, they're going to become game changers in our society. And so going back to those elite athletes who get siphoned off early on in the East German system and the what we're often doing now, they're going to be, many of them are going to be great athletes. A lot of them are not going to be as great as they thought. But what about them as citizens? If when they learn all the basketball skills and knowledge, or soccer skills and knowledge, baseball skills or knowledge, whatever it is, at the same time, their coaches are encouraging them to think of themselves as elevators. Every situation they're in, how can I make this better? Then we've got, our society is going to be a lot better off.
Yeah, and your motto and mantra at the PCA is better athletes, better people, but that really needs an explanation, because it doesn't automatically mean if you're a better athlete, you will be a better person. but it means as a better athlete in the sense, the way you describe it, in the broader context, you become a better person.
Yeah, and it's nice because the triple impact competitor elevator definition works in both sports and out of sports. In sports, it's you elevate yourself, you elevate your teammates, you elevate the game by the way you compete. In life, it's you continue to elevate yourself. You're trying to be the best person you can be. You elevate what I would call your tribe, your family, your friends, the company you work for. And then you're looking to elevate our society. What can I do to make our society better? And if we had thousands and thousands and thousands of kids coming out of high school every year, high school sports, thinking, I'm an elevator, I'm looking how I can make things better. Wow, our country would be different.
Yeah, absolutely. It sure would. Now, do we put the onus on parenting and the cultural mentality of our day that shapes and influences the young kids today, maybe adversely more than favorably, and you're bucking the trend or trying to change the paradigm, if you will?
Yeah. Well, we try to take a systems approach. We start out, we're going to train coaches. We're going to get coaches to become double goal coaches. First goal is winning. Second, more important goal, using sports to teach life lessons. And that translates back to better athletes, better people. But we discovered very quickly that you can't change the culture of youth sports if you only focus on the coaches. So you got to bring the parents in, work with the athletes, and the leaders of organizations need to become what we call single goal leaders. There's a saying in the organizational development world that the only thing, in fact, I'm trying to remember the name of the fellow who said it. One of the giants in organizational behavior, he said, the only thing of value that leaders do is create a culture. Culture being the way we do things here. Now, I think that's a little hyperbolic. I think it's a little overstatement. Leaders do other things. But another statement from the same literature is culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have a great strategy and a terrible culture, and you're probably not going to be successful. You can have a so-so strategy and a fantastic culture, and you're more likely to be successful. So that idea of culture is the way we do things here. Simple idea, but getting a team of 12 players to respond the same way to different adversity situations is not simple at all.
Yeah. It's sort of in the effort to kind of diminish the personal ego and accentuate more of the we over the me and the communal aspect of the team. Well, obviously easier said than done. But it varies from an individual sport to a team sport. So just discuss a little bit about how that comes into play when you talk about coaching young kids.
Yeah. There are a number of schools, typically private schools, that require every athlete to have one individual sport and one team sport. When I'm old enough that when I was growing up in high school in West Fargo, North Dakota, we only had 4 sports. There weren't any sports for girls, which was a real shame because I had some of my classmates who were amazing athletes. But we had football, basketball, wrestling, and track and field. We didn't even have a baseball team. And my 7th grade geography teacher was a state legislator representative and the wrestling coach. And I really idolized him. He was, he was a fantastic teacher in person. And he recruited me to come out for the varsity wrestling team. And I hated it. It was so painful. I love basketball. So I would, right after class, I would go to the varsity wrestling practice and get pinned over and over again by older wrestlers. And then I'd go to the 7th and 8th grade basketball practice and get to shoot baskets. And I didn't want Mr. David Montplaisir, I didn't want to let him down. So I couldn't quit. but I got really run down from having 4 hours of practice every day as a 7th grader.
I bet.
So my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor found out I was doing 2 sports at once, and he said, "You got to pick one." So I was like, "Oh man, Mr. Montplaisir, I'm so sorry, but I have to pick one." Basketball. So there is something about being a swimmer, being a runner, being a wrestler, where it's just you. Now, if you're playing basketball or football, it's kind of just you too, because I've got to block this guy. If I don't block him, my quarterback's going to get, crushed. Or I've got to stop this guy from getting to the basket, or he's going to make a basket. But it's more hidden. And so I really think it is good for kids to have an individual sport and a team sport. Now, the best coaches, we have a national award, the Double Gold Coach Award, and we get thousands of nominations every year. We just announced our 50 winners. We're having our National Youth Sports Awards event at Stanford on April 28th, and we got 30 of our 50 winners coming, and 4 of them are going to be on the stage talking about what they do. These coaches are just amazing. And one of the things that always strikes me is the cross-country coaches. We always get so many cross-country and track coaches nominated for our awards. Well, cross-country is just running. It's just pain, right? But these coaches, and some of the coaches have like 200 kids. They can only run like 10 kids at a time in a meet. But they get these individual athletes into little pods of a team. They're constantly focused on their best, improving their personal best. So yeah, I'm 3 minutes behind the best runner on the team. It doesn't matter because I'm 4 seconds better than I was yesterday. So these great coaches get these kids, and what's better for the future, for your future life, than being a runner, to be, to love running. I did a workshop once at a school, and one of the dads said, cross country, I was talking about making sports fun, and he said, cross country can't be fun, it's just pain. And I didn't know what to do. I turned to the audience and said, well, what are some ways you could make cross country fun? And they came up with like 20 or 30, like fartlek, which is a Scandinavian thing. You run fast and then you run slow, you run fast. Have mini competitions, run in different places, run in a golf course, next day run in a mall. They came up with tons and tons of ways to make running fun. So I think, anyway, I'm kind of going off.
I love it. I love it. You're just riffing on the idea that kids and coaches, they have to make that connection. You have to make that connection with the kid. Why is he going to want to endure that pain? We all know if you're going to run long distances in hill and dale and mud and muck, it's going to sap your soul, but it also could invigorate you if you have the right mindset. So that coach has to have that awareness and then has to instill that in the kid. And as we in the Sports Energy Consciousness Group want to accentuate, the power of the mind, the power of the thinking, the power of transferring that wisdom and insight is so vital to get any athlete, and especially kids, to embrace it, to maximize the experience.
My son is a writer, and he wrote a book called Working in the Shadows. It's about, he took a year off and did work that Mexican immigrants do in this country that it's really hard to get American citizens to do because it's really painful. And one of the jobs he did was he worked in a chicken slaughterhouse in Alabama. And there were 3 groups of people that worked in this slaughterhouse. There were blacks, whites, and what they called Mexicans, but were really mostly Guatemalans. And the blacks and the whites had been in this community for a long time. And they knew that the job they had was not a good job, working nights, ripping apart these frozen chicken carcasses, just popping painkillers like crazy. The Guatemalans, most of them had worked in the tomato fields in Florida, which apparently was really worse than working in this slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
And for them, they saw this as a step up. This is a way to get their kids educated, and they were on the move up. The blacks and the whites in the community didn't see it that way. Now, the point here is that the objective reality for all three groups was the same. They were doing the same jobs in this same crummy factory, but the attitude of the Guatemalans was different. And that's what a great coach can do. It can change your attitude. We got to deal with the adverse physical reality, but can we do it? Can we change our attitude so we make it, we're moving, the river is flowing where we want it to flow?
Yeah, the power of the mind. I remember reading about a Holocaust survivor, one of the few who emerged not unscathed, but less damaged than so many of his peers. And it was his mental fortitude and his ability to compartmentalize, and the power of that carried him through the most horrific of conditions. Or the late, great Martin Luther King telling men who were janitors, it's not the job description or title, it's what you do of it, and you be the best janitor, and you have pride in your craft, even if it seems so menial. So that is ever more important and imprinting on the psyche of kids who don't have the mature development that adults do. So ever more important for coaches to tune into that and focus on that, to get kids to rise above the adversities, or to shine in the challenging moments.
One of the coaches, one of our trainers, told me a story about repositioning. That he was working with a volleyball coach in LA area, and the volleyball team had a pretty darn good season, and now it was the playoffs. And the coach was really disappointed because they were not, even though they had a really good record, their first game wasn't at home, and it wasn't against a weak team. They had to travel a long way and play against a good team. And he was kind of like, ugh. But my friend Chris had been working with this team the whole time, and the girls said, "Hey, coach, it's okay. Look, we want to win the whole thing, right? So we're gonna have to play a good team sooner or later, and the travel isn't so bad. We can, on the bus we can do our homework and we can sing." And they ended up winning the whole thing. That idea of repositioning the situation. You can't change the reality. He could not change the fact that they had to travel and they had to play a good team to start with, but they could change their attitude, and that made all the difference.
Right. I heard your TED talk, and you discussed Brad Stevens' reaction to getting blown out in the second half when Butler lost to my alma mater, UConn, in the championship of the NCAA basketball tournament a few years ago. And he was queried about how devastating the loss would be. And I guess the interviewer was expecting him to be so hangdog about it. And his response was epic. And I'd love for you to share that, because that was emblematic of the message that you bring in the PCA.
And it's really why it's so important to be a double goal coach. Your goal isn't just to win, it's to develop better people. So Brad Stevens asked, and just to recap, Butler went into the halftime locker room ahead of UConn. They shouldn't have been, because UConn was better. But they were ahead, 5, 6, 7 points. And they came back and played perhaps the worst half of basketball, NCAA basketball ever. And it was on TV in the championship. Everybody saw it. And they ended up losing. So the question was, man, how did it feel to lose like that? And he thought for a second. He said, well, I guess if anybody's going to lose like that, it's good that it was our guys, because they have the character to deal with it. So here they were, probably embarrassed, maybe even ashamed by how poorly they played in the second half, and he was lifting them up. Now, if you're a coach and your only identity is based on whether you win or not, Brad Stevens doesn't win all the time. Nobody wins all the time. And a lot of coaches lose a lot. So the idea that you've got this second goal, I'm here to help these kids become better people. And yeah, we lost. Man, we lost because the official made a bad call. We lost because, Billy, who I've been working on to tag up from third base, before he goes home, he sees the ball into the glove of the outfielder, and then he leaves. But he left early, and he got doubled up, and we lost the game. If you got that second goal, actually, of using sports to develop better people, then that's something you can rely on when the scoreboard's not working out for you.
Yeah, how come? Yeah, and it's so unfortunate that I think too many parents either transferring their own, shortcomings as athletes or their own quest to see their kids become the very best and win it all and want to be the talk of the cocktail party, whatever it might be. You put so much undue pressure on these kids. You send the wrong message in so many ways. Life lessons are lost because they're not conveyed or accentuated. And I guess you were talking about being down in Silicon Valley in the Stanford area where type A is the way, and it comes at a great price. I think you do a disservice, and it's unintentional, but it's blatantly wrong.
Yeah, and it makes your life miserable. Coaches who only care about winning, they win a state championship. I remember reading when the book called When Pride Still Mattered. It was a biography of Vince Lombardi by David Moranis. And the thing that struck me about it was the Green Bay Packers would win the championship, the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl wasn't anything like it is now, but it was the championship. They would win it, and the players and the coaches would celebrate. They'd have a party. They'd go to bed the next morning. Vince Lombardi would wake up and was like, God, I gotta win again. I gotta win again. And that's why I think, this is part of the Sports, Energy, and Consciousness group. I think that's why mindfulness is so important. That we've got to be able to stay in the moment. Charlie Marr, who's the mental conditioning guy for the Indians on our national advisory board, and it's a fabulous resource. He talks about keeping your mind in the moment. You got to keep, and that's what our attention either is ripped away by something shocking or surprising, or it drifts away. And we got to keep bringing our attention back. And that's why I think mindfulness and sports is, there's such a natural match there that we can help kids keep their mind in the moment. We talk about a mistake ritual like flushing mistakes or wiping it off or brushing it off. When you make a mistake, we say a mistake is a time machine. That once you make a mistake, you're no longer in the present, you're in the past. And your negative self-talk is kicking in like, oh man, what's wrong with me? Well, a mistake ritual can help you get back to the present. Okay, flush that mistake. We have a 3-step process we call the power of a big but being B. If I say to my wife, Sandra, I really like your new hairstyle, but what's coming? Is it positive?
Negative. Something negative.
So what the word but does is it degrades whatever comes before. I like your new hairstyle, but. So we're going to use the power of a big but. So I am such an idiot. Man, I'm such an idiot. I made that mistake. Well, am I an idiot or am I not? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But what's absolutely true, we want to make it a true statement. What's absolutely true is I feel like I'm an idiot. But what does but do? It degrades what comes before. I feel like an idiot, but I'm the kind of person who doesn't give up easily, who bounces back, who is willing to take the shot, whatever it is. And coaches can use that with kids. One of the things I like about you is that, I'm sure you wish you had made that shot on goal that, could have helped us win the game. I'm sure you wish you had made that shot. But one of the things I like about you is you're the kind of person who bounces back, who's willing to take the shot. And if we fill our kids, our players' psyches with that you're the kind of person who statements that lift them up, the first thought they might have is like, I am. That's the kind of person I am. But they hear it over and over again, and then it becomes part of who they are.
Yeah. Neuroscience is now confirming a lot of what you're saying, that positive mentality and a positive attitude and imaging actually changes the brain chemistry and changes how we live our lives and actualize our being, which is fascinating because, the old paradigm in the past was you're either a jock or you're accentuating the academic side of you. But we're now learning that athletic activity increases the telomere length of your brain as it's growing. So the more athletic you are, the more active you are, the smarter you can be. Yet there seems to be this lack of awareness in too many circles in the educational realm of parents and schools and the like, that sports can be a tool and a vital part of growth and education.
We were working with or we still are, but we were working with this private school, very elite private school in the Bay Area, and the headmaster was concerned because the teachers did not support the sports program, and he felt that they needed to be both focused on academics and sports. So he had us come in and do a workshop for the teachers, explaining what we teach coaches and what we teach athletes. And the whole idea of being a triple impact competitor, being an elevator of people have emotional tanks, and if you fill emotional tanks, that connects you to people. And the teachers came up afterwards and said, "Wow, this is great. This is exactly what our coaches need to hear and what they need to teach the kids." So you're right. It's a misunderstanding that there's this line between the body and the mind. They're all one. They go together and they reinforce.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame that parents couldn't be more a part of that understanding and awareness. And I even hate the phrase sports are extracurricular rather than intrinsically a part of growing and learning and education. And that is a tremendous distinction.
Yeah. One of the challenges we always had is that a lot of foundations focus on education, and when they define education, they mean the classroom. They don't mean sports, but sports is part of your education. So it really does need to come together.
You were extolling the great moment in that women's softball game where the player hit the game-winning home run, but wrenched her knee rounding first base and was carried by the defensive team around the bases, and you called it the Mallory moment. I love you to share that story because I think it gets right to the core of what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, so Mallory Holtman was the first baseman for Central Washington. This happened in 2008, a bit ago now. And a player for Western Oregon hit a home run, and then was so excited. It turns out it was the first home run she'd ever hit in her life. She's a college player. She was a senior, and as a senior, she finally got a home run. So she's so excited. She rounded first base, and she realized she missed the base. So she goes back, and in the pivot, her knee leaves her. So Mallory, nobody knows what to do. And Mallory goes up to the first base umpire and says, "Hey, could we carry her around the bases?" And so the umpire says, "I guess so." Her own teammates couldn't because that would disqualify. So she gets the shortstop to help her, and they carry her. And when they go down to pick her up, the player from the other team says, "What are you doing?" And Mallory says, "We're going to get you the home run that you earned."
Right.
And it was in the first or second inning, so it didn't guarantee that the team would win, but it was a 3-run home run, and they actually did end up winning. So Mallory's team lost. Well, we say that's the Mallory moment, and if you continue, the Mallory moment is an opportunity for you to elevate the game or not. And if you continue to compete as a coach, as a player, sooner or later, you're going to have your own Mallory moment. And then are you going to be ready for it? And an example I like to use is CC Sabathia. Years ago when he was pitching for the Milwaukee Brewers, he threw what might have been a no-hitter. And the only hit was a ball that was dribbled back to him. He bobbled it. And by the time he got the ball and threw it to first, the runner had made it safe. And the scorekeeper called it a hit. So it was a one-hitter instead of no-hitter. And the Milwaukee fans and the Milwaukee media the next day, Sabathia was asked about it, and he said, you got screwed. You got stolen. This no-hitter was stolen from you. And Sabathia says, people need to chill. We're trying to win a pennant race here. It's like he took the pressure off the scorekeeper. He elevated the game. He could have said, yeah, that really made me angry. But he had a chance to elevate the game. Even if you're playing softball like Mallory Holtman was, your Mallory moment's not necessarily going to look exactly like hers, but an opportunity to elevate the game or not.
Yeah, but the challenge for professional athletes is the fact that so much is riding on the results, their careers, their livelihood, their paychecks, and the like. And then kids are so enamored by their star players that they idolize, the pro athletes. And it's a totally different world, yet there are some commonalities. So you have to be very sophisticated to draw those distinctions, and kids often aren't. So they want to be like Mike in the day with Michael Jordan, or you want to be like Steph Curry today. Well, in the performance aspect of it, no one's going to be at that level, 1 out of a million or more. But in terms of how they handle the experience, you see the class of Steph Curry and the warrior mentality. I use that euphemistically, but also literally. So that's a more challenging discretionary observation that kids have to make when they look at their star teams and star players and how they handle things on a professional elite level and how it applies to them as they aspire to be great like their heroes.
I think it goes back to identity again. If you're competing at a really high level with a lot of pressure, business, law, academia, sports, whatever, you've got to have an identity that is more than just you as an athlete. And so that triple impact competitor identity, LeBron James, a lot of people, is LeBron James the greatest basketball player ever? Or is it Michael Jordan? He's certainly one of the greatest, but he doesn't win all the time. And so how do you see your purpose in life? If my only purpose is to win basketball championships, I'm going to be disappointed a lot of the time, even if I'm as good as Michael Jordan or as LeBron James. So that identity driving behavior, I am an elevator. My job is to, whatever situation I'm in, to look and see how I can elevate this situation. We got to get coaches to adopt the identity of an elevator coach. My job is to help my players become elevators and to be one myself. And then we have to help athletes become elevators as well. It'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I love what you say about when you change the culture of sports and you change the attitude and the mentality, that you can really change the culture. You can change the direction of a nation, because these kids are the future. And if they come with a new mindset that is in tune with what you're saying, we'll all benefit from it, as opposed to some of the foibles and shortcomings and problems that are all too pervasive today, with a lot of the negative mindset and that has undermined the unity and the growth of our country.
Yeah, no question about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jim, anything else you want to add? I know you've got a lot of online opportunities for people to learn more about becoming trainers in the PCA, to kind of be ambassadors and emissaries of your message.
Yeah, one thing, our website is positivecoach.org, and people can get a lot of information there. But I want to call people's attention to another website that we have, which is the the Development Zone Resource Center. We believe the problem in youth sports comes from an entertainment sports culture where win at all costs is the driving force. So we've created this concept of a development zone culture. And we want our development zone online resource. We want that to be available. We want people, anybody who has any kind of an issue in youth sports. You know, you're a coach and your kid's parents are driving you nuts, or you're an athlete and you're not getting playing time. What do you do? And you're a parent and your kid used to like to go to soccer practice and now doesn't want to go. What do you do? It's PCA Dev Zone, dev like development zone, PCADevZone.org. And if you go there, we've got hundreds and hundreds of resources, videos from, you mentioned Brad Stevens, Steve Kerr, people like that, but also just what do I do? How do I handle cuts? You know, what's the humane way? I can only carry 13 kids on my team and I got 65 trying out. What's the humane way of handling cuts? Whatever the issue is, come to PCADevZone.org and we'll have an answer for you. We'll have some information about how you can deal with it. Or if we don't, ask the question and we'll get the best resources and get that to you. So I would love people to know about PCADevZone.org because it's an incredible resource.
Well, it is done. And I love your the overriding National Advisory Board when you have not just Steve Kerr and Steve Young, Phil Jackson and Brandy Chastain and so many other so highly regarded, not only elite athletes, but the kind of people that you would admire, even if they weren't champions in their pursuit on the field or in the arena. And that's commendable. And Steve Young is one of the honorees in your gathering April 28th at Stanford, correct?
Right. We're giving him our Lifetime Achievement Award, and a lot of our previous Lifetime Achievement Awards winners are going to be there. Phil Jackson's going to be there. Dusty Baker. It's our 20th anniversary celebration, and it's going to be a big deal. We're back on a Stanford campus where we got started at Maples Pavilion. And Rich, I hope you can come. Offline, let's talk about that. I'll make sure there's space for you. We still got room. It's going to be a huge celebration and just a lot of fun and very inspiring. In addition to Steve Young, and Julie Foudy will be there. Summer Sanders, she was a Stanford swimmer. She's coming back to be our MC. And we're also going to have 4 of the most inspirational youth coaches you've ever seen on stage being interviewed by Julie Foudy. It's a really inspirational evening, and anybody who sees this, check out positivecoach.org for information on it.
Well, that's awesome. And Steve Young is one of my favorites of all time, a longtime friend from my 49er radio days, and his great ascension from a cast-off to a Hall of Famer and a Super Bowl champ. And you couldn't be honoring a more, amazing guy and character on and off the field. Just really one of my favorites of all.
He's top class all the way. He's amazing.
Yes. As are you, Jim. Awesome stuff. Thanks so much for sharing the time and continued success, because the PCA is needed now more than ever, I think.
Rich, real pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and this was really fun. Thank you. And I'll look forward to seeing you, if not on April 28th at our dinner, I'll see you at the conference in July.
What is up, Omni Athletes? Thank you guys for watching another episode of Omni Athletes. If this content is adding value to your lives, guys, please like and share and subscribe in every way you can. Share our content. That helps us grow this community, which is really ultimately what we are after right now. So please like, comment, share, tell your friends about what we're doing. If it's adding value, please share it. And if it's not, tell us so we can really improve this content and make sure it's something that you guys want and want to see. Coming up, guys, in July, I'm super excited to announce we have the 2018 Sports Energy and Consciousness Festival. It's going to be in San Rafael, California. This is an absolutely incredible event for a lot of reasons. The main one being you get to actually engage with so many of the people that we've had on the show, so many of the leaders in sports, energy, and consciousness. The speakers are absolutely incredible, and the community is even more incredible. So I cannot encourage you guys enough. Get to this festival. It is going to be an experience that transforms your vision of athletics, your ability to achieve peak performance, to find flow, to awaken an expanded level of consciousness in your performance that you just cannot find anywhere else. It's truly the tip of the iceberg, and you guys want to be part of it. July 13th through 15th in San Rafael, California. Go to sportsenergyfestival.com to get your tickets today before they run out. It's going to go quick, guys. Get there. sportsenergyfestival.com, July 13th through 15th. We'll see you there.